As a man slowly lost his mind over decades, he got into trouble for all manner of things such as arson, serving alcohol to minors, plastering a giant certain World War II symbol up on the side of a building, and more. However, it was his final act and his bizarre behavior leading up to it that would truly come to make him infamous. A lot of the time, people who come to carry out mass attacks have some sort of mental illness. With a lot of them, it's sort of ambiguous. Sometimes you don't even know they had a mental illness until it's pretty obvious in hindsight. Sometimes they're more aware that they have a problem and actually make a conscious effort to hide it. The man in this case is nothing like that, though. He was more than proud to show his gradual mental decline. John Russell Hauser was born in November of 1955. Raised in Columbus, Georgia, he graduated from Columbus High School and later on Columbus Technical College. According to his own LinkedIn page, he tried out a few other schools as well. He also said that he attended Columbus State University and Faulkner University. He also briefly attended a law school before dropping out. He spent most of his life living in or around the Columbus area. He came to describe himself as an investment manager and an entrepreneur. He continued to claim that he had a law degree from his law school endeavor, however. He also said that he had a certification in accounting, which was more likely to be true. What is known to be true is that he came to be the owner of a number of different bars throughout Georgia. In 1983, John got married and had a daughter as well. According to his wife, he was pretty severely bipolar and it didn't seem that he was doing much at all to deal with it. He only grew more and more disconnected from reality over time. Along with this mental decline came an obsession with purity and more old-fashioned values, an obsession that he would later come to base his entire personality around moving forward. John came to have a strong hatred for pornography. He felt that it shouldn't exist at all, and he started to take out his rage on any establishments that might be selling it or showing it. He grew to oppose local pornographic theaters in the area and tried to take up his concerns with a law firm that represented them. When that didn't get anywhere, in 1989, John decided that he would hire a man to burn down that law firm. For that, a jury actually failed to indict him. The judge did, however, order him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation as he felt that his competency was questionable at best. In the early 90s, John went on to repeatedly call into a local NBC television show. There he would continually try to provoke a reaction by urging acts of violence against abortion clinics while saying that women shouldn't be allowed in the workplace. One of the bars that John would go on to operate would be a pub in LaGrange, Georgia. In this pub, he got caught serving alcohol to minors. When the police found out, his company ended up losing their liquor license. This would be the first time that John would really come to make the news, and it was because of how he chose to react to the situation. He printed out a large swastika the size of a bedsheet and hung it up on the side of the building for all to see, posing for pictures with it along the way. He explained to the local news media that he did it because, quote, "The people who used it, the Nazis, they did what they damn well pleased." After this, John decided to use his newfound free time in order to run for local office in his hometown. However, he didn't get very far, and again it was because of how he chose to conduct himself against his opponents. He was seen all over town personally removing his opponent's campaign signs, and after all the bad press that came from that, he simply chose to drop out of the race. About a year after losing his liquor license, John hit some financial trouble. His savings were running low, causing him to file for bankruptcy in 2002. His mental state continued to decline more and more. He ended up abusing his wife and daughter, resulting in a number of domestic violence complaints. Around this time, John tried to get a concealed carry permit to carry a handgun, but due to those domestic violence complaints and the previous arrest for arson, this was denied. He was still free to own a gun, but he wouldn't legally be allowed to conceal it. At the continual urging of his family, John went on to attempt treatment for his abysmal mental health a few times over the next couple of years. He received some sort of treatment in 2008 after getting another mental health evaluation, and it seems that he continued that treatment until around 2009. This treatment didn't work though, not even close. John's behavior only got worse and more erratic as his daughter's wedding drew near. John wasn't happy with her fiancé for whatever reason and came to make cryptic statements that creeped out his family, saying that the wedding would not be happening and refusing to elaborate on why. John's wife started hiding his guns from him for both his own protection and to protect their daughter, as his anger towards her and her marriage only continued to grow in intensity. One day, John arrived at his daughter's office unannounced and made a scene. He threatened her along with another family member, leading to his family finally cutting ties with him after years of chaos. Both his wife, his daughter, and his daughter's fiancé and his parents all filed restraining orders against him. Due to how violent, threatening, and unpredictable his actions had grown, the order was granted very quickly. Afterward, his family completely cut all contact with him. After losing his family, John was living alone in a house in Phoenix City, Alabama. While living out there, John went out and bought another gun, this time at the Money Miser Northside pawn shop nearby. He attempted to live a normal life in this house on his own, but John just wasn't capable. By 2014, John was struggling to pay the bills. It was to the point where he was seen picking through a local food bank at his church multiple times. After a while, he had failed to pay the bills and his home was facing a foreclosure. Angry about the foreclosure, John decided to do what anyone would do in that situation: booby-trap the house. He did so by trashing the whole place and then rigging the fireplace to catch fire and explode. Having been separated for a while now, John's wife began filing for a divorce. Despite the legal requirement to have no more contact with her, he called her and began to threaten her as soon as he heard about it. In a complete rage, he then drove out to his mother's retirement community. Rather than seek sympathy, he instead threatened to end his own life if she didn't give him some money. He said that he needed the money to seek a new job in Texas. John's mother then called his estranged wife and asked her what she should do. While John's wife urged her to have him hospitalized, she had other ideas. She gave him $5,000 and wished him good luck on the job hunt. It was now July of 2015 and John was hopping into his car, all ready to set out east towards Texas. By around July 3rd, he was on Interstate 10 in Louisiana, exploring the local area. While many who had heard his story might have assumed that he was simply looking for a new area to live, scoping out local places in order to find a place to start over, that was anything but the case. It is now believed that he was trying to find the perfect location in which he would carry out an attack. John ended up in Lafayette, Louisiana. He had no connection to the area aside from an uncle who had previously lived there. This uncle had died more than 30 years prior in 1980 though, so it isn't known if John would have even remembered that fact. John got himself a motel room in the area, one where he would pay a little bit over $200 a week to stay. The next week, he visited a local food bank a few times to get something to eat back at his room. John had become a bit active online, mainly visiting websites related to his increasingly radical views. He had developed a strong hatred for the United States, both the country itself and the government. He continued to elaborate on his belief that women shouldn't work outside of the home, and continued to develop an even stronger hatred towards abortion clinics in addition to his pre-existing hatred towards pornography. He came to praise a lot of figures online that most people would find to be pretty controversial in one way or another. He praised Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, Adolf Hitler, and even the Westboro Baptist Church. The Southern Poverty Law Center later found many different accounts across Twitter and various anti-government forums that all link back to John. In some posts, he casually asked how he could find and join local white power movements. In his post, he wrote, "All the trouble started when they took the Bibles out of school and stopped prayer." John began keeping a journal while staying in his motel room. The journal was all over the place, to put it lightly. He went back and forth between ranting about the government and praising killers to writing about mundane things like his favorite movies and music. At points, he would pause and write things like, "I'm going to take a shower," as if someone were listening to him. Some of his rants were things that many would find completely inconsequential. He adamantly stated that softball, volleyball, and lacrosse should not be considered spectator sports. He said that people shouldn't be able to be called a doctor without specifically having a medical degree. He said that American colleges should only have about 1/4 of the student capacity that they had at the time. One constant theme throughout the journal was John's hatred for the United States. He, on several occasions, referred to America as a financially failing filth farm. He said that the country was all set to collapse soon and that it was very deserved. He wrote, "America as a whole is now the enemy," while listing out problems that the country would soon be facing. One of the problems that he listed was a drop in the stock market that he felt would lead to a total collapse of the world economy and that billions would starve. He said after this, as he put it, "The liberal cesspool will then be on top." This brings us to the biggest target of John's hatred, liberals. However, his definition of what he considered to be a liberal was anything but consistent. While ranting about figures that were more traditionally seen as liberal, he also took shots at Fox News multiple times. He stated, "Fox News is as guilty as all other networks but has a different assignment, to weaken the strong." He also said that not one commentator on the channel is actually conservative. He even expressed a bit of anger towards Donald Trump, who was running for election at the time. This is because homosexuals still had rights, affirmative action still existed, and both pornography and abortion clinics still existed. It appeared that he was frustrated that Trump wasn't expressing interest in eliminating all of those things, but he seemed to remain hopeful that he might. John continued to write, stating, "I have hidden nothing and have hated the US for at least 30 years. And soft targets are everywhere. Military, police, etc. designations are not necessary." In his journal, John thanked a few other criminals. One of these criminals was none other than Dylan Roof, a young man who shot up a historically black church and killed 9 people in order to push his white supremacist views. However, John did have a bit of criticism for Dylan, saying that he had the wrong idea about who his target should have been. He wrote, "Had Dylan Roof reached political maturity, he would have seen that the word is not inwards, but liberal. But thank you for the wake-up call, Dylan." On a different page, he wrote that Dylan was green but good. Just under that, John spoke of another criminal, writing Yusuf, very fine. It's believed that this was a reference to Muhammad Yusuf Abdulaziz, a man who killed 4 US servicemen when he committed a shooting at 2 different military sites in Chattanooga, Tennessee. John seemed to approve of attacks committed by Middle Easterners on American soldiers, also writing that he has always believed that, in his words, the Arabs are the good guys. In the journal, John referenced what appeared to be the idea of an attack he was planning to commit. He wrote, "Yes, it will be said and said, how senseless. But if my act drains the value of the dollar, because it is not based on anything, by creating new expenses, guards, bulletproof glass, etc. at movie theaters, it is for good overall. The US is the enemy of good, of God." John ended his journal by saying that truth is the enemy of the United States before setting off toward the location in which he planned to carry out his attack, the Grand 16 movie theater in Lafayette. After visiting a few different movie theaters, he came to settle on this one in particular. It's believed that this is because it heavily advertised a movie called Trainwreck, a film written by and starring Amy Schumer. While I'm sure that a whole lot of you hate Amy Schumer, John really hated Amy Schumer. The movie was advertised as having very feminist themes and characters. It's believed that this, along with the fact that the movie featured several actors of Jewish backgrounds, John decided that this theater perfectly demonstrated his ideas of American filth. Due to this, he made his decision. On July 23, 2015, John illegally swapped out the license plate on his Lincoln Continental and hopped inside, all ready to set out towards his destination. He was donning a disguise, dressing in a female wig and clothing along with some fake glasses. He arrived at the Grand Theater on Johnson Street where about 300 people were inside, split between 16 different screenings. He parked his car near the door to one of the theater's exits, likely hoping for an easy and seamless escape. John walked through the lobby of the theater and up to a counter to buy a ticket. He bought a ticket 10 minutes late into the screening. It was said that he was acting strange and a bit erratic while doing so. He went into the screening of the movie and sat in the second to last row near the exits. With him, he had brought a High-Point Model JCP 40 caliber handgun and 2 magazines, each holding 10 rounds. John waited roughly 10 more minutes after sitting down in his seat. That is, until he abruptly stood up, pulled his handgun out of his pants, and started aiming down the aisles. One witness said, "From the reflection of the movie, the light, you could see his gun shining, and then you could see the flash coming from the chamber." John started walking up and down the steps in the theater, shooting indiscriminately towards everyone in the seats. Roughly 20 people were in that screening at the time, and very few of them were in a position that made for an easy escape. Another witness said that she saw an old man standing up and shooting. She said, "We heard a loud pop we thought was a firecracker. He wasn't saying anything. I didn't hear anybody screaming either." The witness heard 6 more shots fired before she and her fiancé were able to run towards the exit. Many others would not be so lucky. Many other people in that screening had already been shot. One woman, a young teacher, despite being shot in the leg, had pulled the fire alarm and thrown herself on top of her friend to shield her from gunfire. The theater quickly turned the lights on and began to sound the alarm. Some police officers happened to be only a few seconds away from the theater when they received the first 911 call that a shooting was taking place. Within about 1 minute, 3 to 4 police were on scene at the theater. They arrived to see many different patrons running from the building with various degrees of injuries. In an interview, the Lafayette police chief, Jim Kraft, said, "At that point we had 4 or 5 guys that were ready to engage." By now, John had fired at least 13 bullets, reloading once in the middle of the attack. He shot 11 people in total. Satisfied, he decided that it was time to make his leave. His plan was to exit through a side door in the auditorium and do his best to blend in with the fleeing survivors. However, there was one problem. He had no idea that the police would arrive as quickly as they did. Seeing the flashing lights as he exited the door, he immediately retreated back inside. Unsure of what to do, he fired 3 more bullets towards some of the victims as they fled. Feeling that he was left with no options, he turned the gun on himself and ended the attack. The police quickly made their way through the lobby of the theater and into the auditorium where the attack had taken place. They quickly came across John Hauser, dead with a gun in his hand. They soon came across the other victims as well. The victims came from all walks of life, ranging in age from teenagers to seniors. One man had been shot 4 times at close range, but by some miracle they were able to load him into an ambulance and he went on to survive. Another victim had been shot a whole 7 times but also survived. 5 others would end up in the hospital for extended periods of time as well. However, 2 others wouldn't see the same fate. 2 women had died in the attack. One was 33-year-old Jillian Johnson. She and her husband played in a bluegrass band, owning a shop where they sold toys, jewelry, and printed goods. The other victim was 21-year-old Macy Bro, a student at Louisiana State University who was all set to start school and become a radiologist. The police weren't sure if John had accomplices or if he had rigged the place to explode, so his body was left there for several hours while bomb squad swept the scene. Eventually, they removed John from the theater as well. During an autopsy, it was found that he had a blood alcohol level of 0.1, slightly above the legal limit to drive, which was 0.08. The Grand Theater was closed and locked down for quite some time as the police continued to sweep the scene. The police found John's car shortly into the investigation, parked near the exit. They found 2 items that they called suspicious objects with wires inside the car. Feeling that the car itself might be rigged to explode, the bomb squad came out to deal with it. They found 3 similar objects in the theater that they detonated as well. Afterward, they found even more different disguises in the trunk of the car. It appeared that John planned to flee and may have even planned to continue his attack at other locations while swapping out disguises along the way. Back at his motel room, the police found John's 39-page journal. Inside the journal was a scribble noting the time and date of that screening of Trainwreck along with various other ramblings. What they couldn't find was a clear motive. While it was obvious that he hated the United States and liberals, it wasn't clear what he hoped his attack would achieve in the end. They then came across John's criminal record, which admittedly was pretty old. He hadn't actually been arrested in over a decade. They also learned of his mental state and questioned how he was able to get his hands on a gun in the first place, and it was actually due to a loophole. While John had been ordered to undergo a mental competency evaluation in the past, he was never actually involuntarily committed. He was merely encouraged to go commit himself. And on top of that, as it turns out, none of this had actually been correctly referred to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation either. Several local churches decided to honor the victims in the attack shortly after the attack took place. It was said that the turnout for these memorial services was so large that almost all of the churches were at least double capacity. Amy Schumer herself, the star of the movie in which John shot up, posted to Twitter about the incident as well. She wrote, "My heart is broken and all my thoughts and prayers are with everyone in Louisiana." Later, she joined her father's cousin, U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, in calling for stricter gun control and increased funding for mental health care. She further expanded on how she felt about the shooting in her autobiography later on. In the book, she refused to refer to John by name, instead focusing more on talking about the 2 who had died in the attack. The Grand 16 Theater was shut down for a long time following the attack. It didn't reopen until about 4 months later in November. Before the reopening, a memorial ceremony was held in order to honor the victims. The governor of Louisiana at the time, Bobby Jindal, traveled to the scene of the attack and prayed for the victims. He thanked the local police for their quick action during the shooting. A few U.S. senators, David Vitter and Bill Cassidy, also released statements expressing their sorrow at what had happened. Authorities in both Louisiana and Alabama criticized the lack of funding for mental health programs in the U.S. On January 13, 2016, the police finally released a massive 598-page report on the attack, as well as photos and information revolving around John's hotel room. Even then, though, there still wasn't a concrete explanation as to what John actually expected to accomplish with the attack. All we really have to go by is the previous quote from his journal in which he said, "If my act drains the value of the dollar by creating new expenses, it is for good overall." However, this seems to be John acknowledging possible side effects of his attack rather than expressing a motive. we will never know exactly why he did what he did. In the end, the answer may be a simple one, that he had lost all semblance of sanity after failing to confront his deteriorating mental state over decades. Once again, everybody, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you want to check it out, I have a merch store now. There you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and some other stuff too. I'm going to be putting up some new designs on there pretty shortly as well. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If you need to reach out to me about anything, that's probably the best way to do it. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to me on Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.